Sure.
All right.
Okay, we're recording.
All right. Somehow I just lost the agenda. Okay, I'd like to call to order the May 5th, 2020 meeting of the Middleton Board of Selectmen. Just a reminder that this obviously is being recorded and that any participants agree to have both their name, their voice, as well as their picture broadcast. Excuse me. We have, starting with the warrant number 2023.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. On the payroll side, this week we have a total of $697,340. And on the bills payable side, only $247,123. Of that, $85,311 for payroll deductions, normal expense that we have. Under DPW, $14,565 for catch basin cleaning and $14,568 for landfill monitoring. And then under MELD, $10,000 for tree trimming. Sarah Wood has reviewed this and asks the board's approval.
Any questions for Mr. Sheehan? If not, we'll take a roll call vote. Mr. Clerk, can you do the roll call?
I move we approve the warrant as proposed.
I have a motion. Do I have a second?
Second.
All right. Rick, can you call out people and we'll vote?
Okay, Selectman Hooton.
Aye.
Selectman Pentakis.
Yes.
Selectman Cresta.
Yes.
Selectman Moreski. And
Yes.
Selectman Cassiotis, I'm sorry.
Yeah.
All in favor?
Great. All right. Again, for some reason, I'm banned from looking at the agenda. So, oh, there it goes. All right, we have minutes. We have the open session dated April 21st, 2020. I have a motion to accept.
Mr.
Motion to
Chairman,
accept.
and I second.
All righty. Mr. Cassi, do I have any further discussion? Hearing none, Mr. Cassiotis, can you take a roll call vote?
Selectman Cassiotis, yes. Selectman Pentakis.
Yes.
Selectman Cresta.
Yes.
Mr. Chairman.
Yes.
Selectman Moreski.
Yes.
All righty. We will then move on to the town administrator updates and reports.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. A few updates for the board and the public. Tonight we'll talk about town meeting a little bit, well, in a couple of minutes, but the most important thing the town meeting does is approve spending. This is a reminder for the public that this Thursday night, May 7th, the board and the finance committee will be meeting in joint session at 7 o'clock via Zoom in order to conduct the budget hearing that's required by the charter and to read through the warrant for the annual town meeting. Like any public meeting, residents can participate by logging into the Zoom, the login. The information for the login is available on the agenda, and the agenda is available in the calendar on the town website at middletonma.gov. The calendar is down at the bottom of the page. If people just click on the agenda, it'll open up and you can grab that link and either click right on it or cut and paste it into your browser. So we mentioned on the warrants that there's been some catch basin payments made, that catch basin cleaning and street sweeping is ongoing. We're scheduled to pave this week on Ryer Lane and Devonshire Road. Both the projects that have been on the books for the DPW for a while. So that is funded with Chapter 90 money. Obviously, coronavirus continues to cast a shadow over everything we do, both with respect to work and respect to outside of work. Last week, the governor announced that the stay-at-home order would be extended at least through May 18th. We heard today from the lieutenant governor that the reopening guidelines would likely not be issued until the 18th. We were somewhat hopeful that that would happen the week before, but her comments today indicate that that will occur on the 18th, which is a Monday. We're starting to develop our own reentry plan here for municipal operations, so putting together a little task force to work on that so that we're ready to go as soon as the governor lifts the order to such extent that we can reopen or begin to reopen, at least on a partial basis. Numbers continue to rise in Middleton. As of today, 55 COVID cases in the at-large population and 70 at the jail for a total of 125. And of that, we've had 5 deaths in Middleton. So it is unfortunately starting to affect some other things a little bit further down the road. Community type events, Memorial Day parade that we usually have has been canceled by Gary Bent, the Veterans Service Officer. The committee was unanimous in the decision to not hold the parade this year. Chief Will's Day, as of I believe just yesterday, has been canceled, and I've talked to colleagues around the North Shore that report that similar events in other communities are also being canceled. 4th of July fireworks and similar activities, even the fiesta up in Gloucester, which is I think the last weekend in June, has also been canceled. So it's having a continuing effect on non-work activities as well as work activities. So one positive that's come out of the coronavirus is a drop in crime, and that is a generally a statewide thing, and I suspect a nationwide occurrence as well. There's obviously a lot less traffic than we're used to seeing. Reports nationwide that traffic is down 50%. I can certainly attest to it. Coming up and down 495 every day to get to Middleton, far fewer cars on the road. Fewer cars equals fewer traffic stops, fewer arrests. One interesting data point I think it's 7 weeks now since the state order was imposed, Middleton PD has only taken 2 people into custody. So dramatic cutback in what the PD sees. And again, that's not unique to Middleton. So at the last meeting, the board accepted a gift to the Council on Aging from Falk Renewables. Falk Renewables is the company that built the solar farm for Meld, or in partnership with Meld, behind Rockies and Market Basket. At that point, I asked that the dollar amount not be disclosed. It was on the agenda, but it was still a little bit up in the air. That has since been formalized. We have actually received the donation, and the donation is in the amount of $40,000, which is the amount that we expected, but we didn't want to jump the gun. So a remarkably generous gift from Falk Renewables to the Council on Aging. This will support Meals on Wheels and other costs associated with helping people out during the COVID pandemic. So we're thankful to Falk. Jillian Smith has already reached out to them with a thank you, and I'll follow up with a letter from the board on behalf of the board, thanking them for their generous donation as well.
Yeah, it's outstanding. Thank you.
It is. It really is pretty remarkable, considering they're an international company. The people that we deal with are somewhere in New York State. We've never met any of them. We were dealing with they ended up buying this project from an intermediary. So we never actually dealt directly with Falk, and it's a pretty remarkable gift for a company that has never met any of us. So we're deeply appreciative of their generosity, and we'll make sure that we put that funding to good use. So,
Yeah, and I'd ask Mr. Chairman if we could communicate with Falk officially that the board's extremely thankful for not just the generosity, but how that's going to go to great use to support many of the seniors as we deal with COVID. Which, if I could add to that, Andy, has the town looked at procuring any not medical grade or N or KN95 masks, but just regular masks that could be distributed to seniors and others that may be in a higher risk category? As you know, as today was the first day of the must wear a mask if you are out in the public and are having difficulty social distancing. But I know that, you know, there's a lot of folks probably after the 18th when the order is lifted that are going to start coming out in greater numbers. And there may be some individuals in the town that need access to masks, whether it's cloth or otherwise.
yeah, we haven't done anything formally, at least through our office. I think in sporadic cases there are masks and other things being distributed. Not something terribly formal, but I'm going to be at the COA tomorrow, and I'll talk to them and see if they're giving masks out, and if they have enough to give them. I know there are also some people in groups that are donating masks,
Absolutely.
knitted masks or handmade masks, and that's certainly well appreciated. So
Yeah,
I'll talk to Jillian and Andy Diskin tomorrow at the COA and see what they have to offer in that.
yeah, I know there's a lot of folks in town that have been making masks, giving to folks. Paula Penta, for example, I think she made masks and asked folks for donations in lieu the cost of the mask to go to the Council on Aging, which I think were in excess of $2,500 if I had remember correctly. So I know there's a lot of folks in town doing so, but let me know, Andy. I've got a source that we can access at a very reasonable price that we can likely get masks if there are individuals in the town, whether it's seniors, veterans, or anybody else that's in need. What I don't want folks is to feel like they now going to be able to venture out and don't have a mask accessible to them. So,
Yeah, you gotta have a mask.
Okay, will do. That's all I've got for updates for tonight.
Thank
Andy,
you.
can I just ask you a quick question? In my morning stroll, I happen to go down Gregory Street, and someone has planted 6 beautiful trees on the side. Is that us, or who did that?
That is, you'll recall that a couple of months ago, the Institution for Savings donated, I believe it was 15 trees as part of their 200th birthday celebration.
The
So some of
aspens,
those-
I believe. Yeah.
We thought they were all going to be elms, but they're
Oh, elms. Okay. Yep.
different varieties. So some went in on Gregory, some went in at Richardson Park behind the library, along Shirley Reynard walkway there.
Yep.
And then there's some more that will be going in. We're going to put some at 105 South Main Street so that we can incorporate them into the landscaping plan for the municipal complex.
Well, nice looking trees.
Yeah, they came in, I think they came in last week, or they started to come in last week, and DPW has been doing the planting for that.
Oh, beautiful, nice.
Nice.
All right, any questions for Mr. Sheehan?
No,
All righty, we'll move on to our next agenda item, which is the public comment period. There's a couple of people that aren't selected on board. Anybody have any comments? All right, hearing none, we'll move to our next agenda item, is to review and discuss the June 10th annual town meeting, including the publication, et cetera.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. So we talked a little bit about this at the last meeting about the alternative approach that we're going to take to the warrant book this year. I spoke yesterday with the town clerk and the moderator, who are both on the call on the meeting tonight, and I would ask them to chime in. One of the things that came out of that, the numerous conversations that we've had, is the desire to strip down the warrant to the extent that we can. If we can get rid of extraneous articles, if we can consolidate articles, and even use a consent agenda, which I don't know that Middleton has used historically, but it is something that is available and is used in many communities. The consent agenda essentially takes those articles that are perceived based on based on experience, takes those articles that don't generate any or much debate, lumps them all together, and they can be disposed of as a single article. For us, it would be potentially things like the reauthorization of revolving funds, the approval of the two enterprise budgets, water and sewer, the two light department articles, things like that. That generally the Chapter 90 authorization, things that generally don't generate a lot of conversation. One of the things that Barbara has particularly wanted to be able to do is put the word out that we're conducting our business, we're doing all of our business, but we want to do it expeditiously and put people at ease that they're not going to be sitting here for 3 or 4 hours as we slog through the sort of normal town meeting items. So in terms of the articles, and I wanted to get the board's feedback on these. Article 2 is the closing of the snow and ice deficit. We do not have a snow and ice deficit this year, so I would suggest taking that off the warrant. Even if we don't take action on it, it's still a couple of minutes to just introduce the article and make a motion to take no action. So if we can just take it off, I think it's all the better. Article 3, I think we'll potentially be in a position to do the same thing, or I hope to be. This Article 3 is a supplemental article that we put on in case any departments are running short. We are looking at a couple, and we'll make a decision on that in the next week or so whether we need those.
Andy, would these be dollar amounts that would be transferred, or dollars that would be supplemented more than the Finance Committee has within their remaining authority?
Well, that's what we're contemplating now, is rather than make these transfers at town meeting, just do them as reserve fund transfers from the Finance Committee. So we think there's enough room, and even if something really unexpected happened, there is a provision in the law where by vote of the Board of Selectmen and the Finance Committee, funds can be transferred between departments. It doesn't take town meeting action to do that anymore. So we do have some flexibility.
Andy,
Yes.
how is Sarah doing with getting a third quarter report?
She has some of it compiled. She's really been working on finalizing or redoing the operating budget and the capital budget. So
Okay.
I'm not sure if she'll be in a position Thursday. I don't think she'll be in position Thursday to deliver that third quarter report. But probably either the second meeting in May or maybe in the first meeting in June should have that together. So, but I'll talk to her tomorrow about that. The other item or article that's on there that doesn't appear to be necessary is Article 12. And that's the approval of the MELD budget. Under statute in Massachusetts, municipal light departments operate. There's a whole different structure of financial articles that control their operations. There is no appropriation necessary for town meeting. The statute says that the receipts can be used by the manager to pay any expenses that come up. So there really isn't a need for that appropriation. It's a tradition article, and I generally don't have an argument with maintaining tradition, especially when it comes to town meeting. But this year we've started to look at kind of everything. as to whether we need them on there. So
Is there I thought there was language in our charter that required a town meeting action on this. I mean, I know it's been perfunctory. I mean, technically the article says that the town meeting approves of the budget, but there's never actually a budget to approve of.
right.
I always thought there was something in our charter that required us to do this.
Now, I think from the Electric Light Commission, it's one of those things that they've always said didn't have to be on, but was more on just to give some information to the town.
Yeah, right. So, so if the board is okay with us pulling Article 2, which is the snow and ice deficit, and pulling Article 3, assuming that, within the next, well, between now and the next meeting, I guess we would say, the meeting on the 19th, we would finalize, and unless something unexpected comes up, we would pull Article 3 as well. And then whether you want to keep 12, the light department budget, or you want to dispose of that one.
And I'm fine taking it out.
Yeah.
Yeah, agreed.
Okay. And I will work with the moderator, and I know that she'll work with council on the consent agenda. And Barb, I don't know if you want to chime in on that at all. I don't want to put you on the spot, but since you're there, I'll put you on the spot.
No, I think it's great to take those articles off. I think anything we can do to consolidate the remaining articles through a consent order sends a better message to the residents in terms of seeing a consolidated meeting, because we want them to feel confident about coming and feel that they're going to be in a safe environment and have an expedited meeting before them. And I think a consent agenda will help expedite the meeting.
And then in terms of the logistics of the meeting, Barb, Eileen, and I have been working through those details as well. And I think we'll probably set the room roughly the way we normally set it up. I think it's easier for the janitors in some ways to do it that way. And then we'll instruct people to give themselves plenty of space as they come in. But if we put seats every 6 or 10 feet, then if a couple comes in, they're going to start moving chairs around, and it kind of defeats the purpose. So the capacity is, I believe, 575 in that room. So there's more than enough to handle what is our normal town meeting. And we'll also have the cafeteria available, which is another couple of hundred. And then we'll figure out, as you start to peel back the elements of this thing and hold a town meeting or plan a town meeting with social distancing and everything else, lots of things come up, from what is the platform for the moderator and the clerk? Do we need an expanded platform in order to spread them out? How do the board and the FinCom, how are they seated so that they're all sort of together but not together, not too close together? How do we check people in? How do we seat them? Coverings for the microphone, disposable coverings for the microphone, so that when somebody speaks, they're speaking into a protected microphone. So there are microphone covers, and so we're in the process of getting those so that we can replace those for every speaker.
So Andy, I think the bigger likelihood is if the governor's not making a decision till at least May 18th for reopening, and post reopening, we may not be moving much larger than the size group that can be now together, which is 10. Mm-hmm. My opinion is the governor's not going to allow gatherings at the size of 100 and larger by the time of this town meeting. Now, we're not the only town that's going to be dealing with this. There's going to be multitude of towns, and I know that the legislature has passed language that would allow cities and towns to operate in a 1/12 budget based on the previous year, which has a whole slew of other ramifications to our greater budget. But what are we thinking should that be the case? I mean, we need 100 members, we need 100 individuals to just meet the quorum requirement.
Right.
So I can pretty much guarantee that if we don't have 100 people, we're not having town meeting. If we have town meeting, we're going to have over 100. And I expect by that date in June, we're not even going to be allowed to have that many people in a room together.
Yeah, so we do have a fallback plan for the week of the 22nd, which is the last full week. We talked about it before that, if depending on what the governor's order is and how the reentry rollout is structured, you may have 280 towns in the same boat, or however many towns there are that have a town meeting, and so we're all going to be scurrying, and one of the challenges will be, can we do it? If we have to be in that the last 10 days of the month between the 21st and the 30th, can we do it and have all the players there? The most challenging will be town council, because we're not their only client. And it may be that we just have to bite the bullet, do the best we can to be prepared, and have a phone connection to them in case something happens. And they may be on call for 4 or 5 meetings at one time, depending on how things go. So, and if the governor's order doesn't allow for a gathering of 100 by the end of June, then I don't think we have any choice but to do a 1/12 budget for July, in the hopes that we can do a town meeting sometime in July.
Well, and I think we should also prepare for the potential that we may not receive a quorum, even if the governor's order does allow that large of a crowd.
Right.
So Andy,
Yes.
if on June 10th, we can't have a gathering of 100 plus, would the moderator sort of start and continue the meeting like a planning board public hearing could be done? Or are we then changing at some point, saying we're rescheduling the town meeting?
It depends on whether the meeting has been posted or not, whether the warrant has been posted. So if the warrant has been posted, the moderator can postpone it for 30 days without any other action required. If the meeting has not been posted, then the board can just make an announcement and say, we're not going to hold the meeting on the 10th, and pick a new date.
But the reason I'm asking is as it relates to the Masco budget,
Mm-hmm.
which has to be the certification has to be 45 days before the earliest town meeting. Right now, June 10th, our meeting is the earliest.
Mm-hmm.
So Masco, even though they cut the budget, there is now second thoughts about it. So, and at June 10th, we can't certify another budget at a higher level than it was certified after the cuts.
Mm-hmm.
That's why I'm asking if the June 10th, if we don't go on June 10th, would it be considered a continuation, in which case the 45-day period for Masco doesn't change? Or is it a new date, which then moves the 45-day period?
Good question.
Yeah, again, I think it goes back to whether the meeting has been posted or not.
Okay.
Yeah,
If it's been
that should be
posted and the moderator is the one postponing it, then the 45 days would be from June 10th.
And when would this meeting be normally posted?
the calendar that I sketched out today would have it posted around I think it's around the 26th of May. We can certainly move that up, but we're meeting on the 19th. We figured we'd wrap things up in the week following that meeting. It's a snug timeline for us this year with everything that's going on, having to redo the budgets. And so sometime after the 19th, but before the end of the month.
So Andy, I think we're looking at a likely scenario that the time frame that we were hoping to hold this is just not going to work. Both in the time frames, I want to fully unpack what Costa just talked about, which is the Masco budget cuts now being revisited, and what that actually means. But I'm thinking we need to move to the later date for a slew of reasons. A is we don't know what the governor is going to do yet. The bigger issue beyond the governor, even if he does lift the item, is I'm not sure we're going to reach a quorum. There is going to be a lot of folks that are not going to be feel safe enough to walk into a room that they know there's going to be at least 100 individuals at.
Right. Yeah, no question. We do have, so when the talk of the 1/12 budget first came out, it was very alarming to me because as the board members know, there are certain obligations that we have that we pay on the first warrant in July every year. Pension assessment, our insurances, our Masco assessment. And so some of those come with the insurance and the pension assessments, particularly, they come with an early pay benefit to us. We save a couple of percent if we pay it all at once at the beginning of the year. A strict application of a 1/12 budget would not allow us to take advantage of that early pay discount. The legislature, in its wisdom, did put in language that allows us to adopt a not less than 1/12 budget. And so we would have, at least from the guidance that I've seen from Sean Cronin at the Division of Department of Revenue, we would be able to pay those assessments and get that early pay savings, which is not insignificant. It's on the pension side, it's at least $30,000. So it's certainly worth chasing after. So I think we can, we'll meet the 19th, so we'll know, we'll have a day to react to the governor's order, unless the board wants to change course tonight and either push out to a later date in June or move in the direction of a 1/12 budget.
Andy, do you want to mention the pending legislation?
Oh, yeah. So there's another bill that has been adopted by the Senate. It's being debated by the House next week. That would allow the board to adopt, or one of the provisions would allow the board to adopt a lower quorum requirement, as much or not more than 10% of what the normal quorum is. So for Middleton, it could go down to 10. We would not be able to do anything except those necessary budget items. So essentially the operating budget, the revolving funds, the enterprise budget. I'm not even sure if we would be allowed to do the capital budget. That hasn't been clarified for me yet. So
Surely wouldn't be able to do anything non-budgetary or around the issue of zoning or the change in the personnel bylaws and all of those items.
correct.
It's just for the period of the emergency order.
Yes, but yeah, for the duration, and I forget if it extends beyond, like 30 days beyond.
I think it's 30 days beyond, if they accept it as drafted.
Right.
And then after then, we would have to call another town meeting to confirm everything else, or?
Either that or just shelve it until the fall. So the approach that I've been taking through all of this, and certainly understanding that people are going to be nervous about getting into a room with 100 or 130 other people, but there's also concern that there's going to be a second and potentially third wave of COVID outbreak, and I'd rather, I was hoping that we could sort of take advantage of a window in June time period to get the legislative work done that needs to get done in case we get hit again in the fall and we can't hold a what would normally be a town meeting in the fall.
So, I think, we stay on course until the 19th. And then we'll know a little more, kind of firm up an alternative date in that week of the 22nd, if we need to go in that direction. But I'm not sure, what, we'll see about this legislation about a lower quorum and what could that mean. So I want to wait until the 19th before finalizing something.
I agree.
Yeah. And I looked at the calendar as we were talking. I have it penciled in to have the constable post on the 22nd of May, which is the Friday after that meeting on the 19th. So, so that would give us enough time to get things ready, and then give us enough time to put together a one-page mailer to households. We're working on that with a description of the articles, a very brief description of the articles, and also talk about why we're doing it this way, what the social distancing measures will be in place at that time, and other things to try to put people's minds at ease and make it clear to them that it's not an unsafe situation to come to town meeting. So, but we'll keep working on that, and then be ready to pivot if we need to on the 19th.
And just one last comment on this, Andy. As we move forward, and if we end up pushing this out to a later date, especially after we have posted and notified, what are the communication strategies beyond the initial mailing, if we're notifying for a new date, or if we're actually going to implement the 12th, 1/12 budget activity?
Yeah, so we'd use our normal arsenal of the website, Facebook, the e-blast through the website. We can do a reverse 911 through the regional dispatch center, and we take advantage of all of that. We don't use newspapers much anymore. We use it when we're required to for certain things, but newspaper readership is so low that we don't really rely on that too much. But
It's only a weekly anyway. It wouldn't match the time frame.
yeah, so we could certainly do something in the Salem News if we thought it was had enough reach.
Before we leave the warrant, on the Article 6, which is the Community Preservation Budget article,
Mm-hmm.
The DOR just came out with new guidance based on what's happening at the Registry of Deeds with, the COVID crisis. And their recommended match is 11.2%, which I've used 25%. It doesn't make much of a difference because we're not allocating, appropriating, very close to what we're budgeting. So we can try to redo the budget or just let it come out in the wash when, whenever the match comes, the following year. Any thoughts?
So you're saying the 11% is because the amount of filings has plummeted, or
Yeah.
because they haven't had a chance to reconcile? Because
No, because of, lower revenue stream.
yeah, so I don't think that revenue stream is going to bounce back up very quickly.
Be too much, yeah.
Yeah, but, we're, not allocating, we would have like 238,000 in our fund balance with that 25% match. So if we leave it unchanged and it comes in at 11%,
Right.
we would then have just, $35,000 less. It doesn't really make a difference. If we're allocating closer to our overall dollars that we had, then we need to worry about something. So, I don't know if the DOR would, slap our hand because we didn't follow their guidance, but practically it doesn't have an impact.
Okay.
I don't have a problem keeping it the same.
So Andy, if you think on it or town council has a different opinion, then we can act accordingly. But like I said, it's not really have a tangible impact on financial.
Yep.
Yeah, okay, I'll talk to council about it. I'm of the same opinion, Costa, that it doesn't really affect us too much to stick with the same budget. The transfer doesn't come in until, well, the distribution doesn't come in until November anyways. And so, but I'll check with him and close that loop with the board.
Okay.
Yeah.
So are we done with the town meeting warrant?
I don't know if, beyond Warren, I don't know if there's any update you have. I know we have our meeting on Thursday, joint meeting with the Finance Committee, but if there's any other, I know you and I have talked earlier this week, but any other input around where you think we are on revenue projections and others. But I think there's a distinct possibility by Thursday's meeting that we will have statewide unemployment numbers. We're not going to have unemployment numbers for maybe our region, or surely not for our town, but all signs are pointing to something between 25 and 34% of unemployment that may be reported as the April report.
Yeah, so Sarah has been working hard on this over the last couple of weeks to revise the projection and the model that she's developed or modified over the years. I'll be sending that out probably before I leave the office tonight, so that everybody has it and can begin to review it between now and Thursday. We're in a balanced position now on the operating budget. We're in a very good position with respect to the capital budget and preservation of free cash, holding aside some free cash for the future. This came up in the Finance Committee meeting on, I think it was Wednesday of last week. John Erickson was adamant about doing what we can to preserve our free cash, similar to comments that you've made, Brian. And so we've looked at that. We've got a couple of ideas in there about how we can do that in order to sort of claw back a little bit more free cash. It is all legit. It's not gimmicky. There's no, as some presidential candidate at one point said, fuzzy math. And so it's above board. It is, we've made cuts to our revenue projection, and we've made cuts to our expenditure budget, and we'll lay that all out on, well, it's all laid out in the memo and in the documents that I'll send out later on tonight. But
yeah, I think I'm also concerned about the current fiscal year in terms of we may be looking at 3 or 4 months of a pretty dramatic hit to as you and I have talked about, two revenue streams, both our meals tax revenue stream and our lodging revenue stream, which both
Right.
combined are about 400,000 a year. I think we may be looking at a 30-40% cut to that. And while our budget will still be balanced, that's going to have a dramatic effect on the free cash amount that's going to be available at the close of June 30th. So,
Right.
and I don't know if Sarah's done some projections on that as well.
She has. Most of the work has been forward looking into 21. We know that with the amount of free cash that we carried forward this year, we can afford to take a hit and certainly not be in a, there's no question that we won't be in a negative free cash position. We won't run a deficit. Normally our free cash has ranged between about 1.8 and 2.2 million. We were around 3 last fall when we closed out fiscal 19. That was an extraordinary year for a number of different reasons. It was a one-time thing. So a normal fiscal 20, we would have been looking at free cash of around 2 million. Obviously, the meals and lodging taxes are going to croak us this year. The second half of, or the final 4 months of the year, of the fiscal year. There are some other things that are also trending lower, and that's penalties and interest primarily. Building permit activity has been fairly robust, and I've seen that in conversations with colleagues in the area too. So it's surprising, but when you think about projects that builders have in the pipeline, they can't really afford to take 3 or 4 or 5 months off if they don't have to. So they're continuing to go forward. The condominium project on North Main Street is pulling permits. Those are good-sized permits. The 99 is going through permitting, and they'll be pulling permits fairly quickly, either this fiscal year or early next. Initially, their plan was this fiscal year, but that may get pushed out a little bit. But I think they also want to be ready to open whenever the customers are ready to come back.
But I think, Andy, we have to be very cognizant of the projects that are being kicked off right now, or projects that have already received funding, that have already been financed and so forth through whatever those organizations or individuals are financing, or self-paid. If you see now in the finance market, just in the mortgage market right now, dollars have greatly changed. New construction and people looking for mortgages now are looking at a 25% down payment rather than previous smaller amounts of down payment, until we get through what is happening right now. I think there is so much what if here that I'm very concerned about the two items on our current fiscal year, which is meals tax and lodging tax. I am even more concerned about the future fiscal year on those two items. Should we end up with 3 periods or 2 more periods as been potentially proposed as occurring on shutdown periods due to flare-up of COVID-19. And secondly, I think there is going to be a cut in dollars available for additional construction in the remainder of the current fiscal year, the next fiscal year coming. So I think my biggest concern is that the local aid boost, the free cash boost we saw last year, might be enough to carry us through the shortage in this fiscal year that may happen in revenues, but we're going to have little to no history of free cash to carry on. We're not going to be looking at 1.8 to 2.2 million at the end of this.
No question.
Year.
No question.
I think it's going to be a minuscule amount compared to what we're used to, which is going to ripple effect into multiple years. And I want to make sure that if what we're going through right now economically, if this happens again in the fall and then happens again next spring, that will be absolutely devastating to our budget. I don't want to be at a special town meeting in the fall or a special town meeting in the spring actually cutting and laying off folks, because that's what's going to happen.
Right. So, and I don't want to get too far ahead of ourselves for Thursday's meeting with Finance Committee. What we intentionally laid out or set out to do in revising the spending plan for fiscal 21 was to put ourselves in a position where we would not have to take any drastic action at this point. We've got flexibility in the way that we've structured things, so that if we come out of the COVID shutdown and we don't go back in, then we'll be in a position to potentially put funding back in for the things that we cut if we want to. If things turn out to be worse than they look now, or it lasts longer, or there's another uptick in COVID activity, and we have to take more drastic action, we're positioned to do that, and we've got more than one arrow in the quiver in order to do that, to be able to do that. So, what I don't want to do is start making drastic cuts now that may end up not being necessary 4 or 5 months from now.
I'm not proposing drastic. I'm just proposing that we need to be rational. I mean, if there is no second and third bounce in the fall and next spring, items we can backfill in a fall special town meeting. We've done this before.
Mm-hmm.
We have hired additional police and fire that we've done this mid-fiscal year so we could actually afford it in an easier manner. I would rather make a conservative decision now financially and try to make it up in the fall than to make a non-drastic decision now, if you want to use that term, and then end up having to be extremely drastic in the fall.
Yeah, so again, we've laid it out. It'll be coming out tonight by email to the board members and to the Finance Committee. I think it's worth taking the time to review what we've laid out, the path that we've set forth, and again, looking at the options that we've reserved for ourselves down the road, depending on which way this goes, because nobody knows what's going to happen. We don't know if it's going to, if the sun's going to come out and everything's going to be fine, or if we're going to have a winter that lasts for 15 months. So, so we're positioned to react and pivot in whichever direction we need to, and I think it's a prudent plan that we've put together, and I'd just invite everybody to take a look at it, and we can talk about it Thursday.
I also don't think that the meals tax decrease will be as drastic as some people think.
I was gonna say, yeah.
Yeah, we've seen, I don't have the numbers at hand, but Sarah has been tracking that, and it's much less severe than I would have guessed. There's a fair amount of takeout activity going on. I guess in a way, we're fortunate that 245 or Main Street Grill hasn't been operating for a while, and so you can't lose what you didn't have, and so that we had lost that anyways. But there's been a fairly consistent backfilling of meals tax revenue. Hard to believe that it's all off of Dunkin' Donuts and subs and pizzas, but I know in my house we're getting tired of cooking all the time, so we're ordering out more than we were a few weeks ago, and I think that's.
I don't disagree with that. I guess my question is, so when we get our meals tax receipts from the state, let's say we get receipts on, what do we get, the monthly, quarterly? How often do we get these?
I think they're quarterly.
So we're not going to see the April, May plummet, the mid-March, April, and May plummet maybe until June, July. So we're not seeing right now dollar revenues in our meals tax aligned with the time frame that many of these restaurants have been closed. And while they have, obviously, many of them been doing takeout, I would argue, I mean, using another example, Maggie's Farm, while they've been doing limited takeout, they're surely not doing the revenue that they were doing prior to the shutdown.
Oh, no question. It's certainly not, they're not, nobody's doing 100% of what they were doing. But they're not doing zero.
Some
And I know Costa sees it firsthand.
takeout businesses, and I know from experience and from people I know that have these establishments, are booming. Their sales are way up. So that's why I don't think, if we don't have a lot of, a community that doesn't have a lot of sit-down restaurants isn't going to be impacted as much as a community that has a lot of sit-down restaurants.
Yeah, we'll get that data from Sarah for Thursday night though, on meals.
Okay, let's go on to our next agenda item. A discussion and a vote on a revised Oakdale Cemetery rule.
So we started working on this probably 6 months or so ago. Came about as I think it came out of one of the waivers that was entertained for headstones, and so we started to look at the Oakdale Cemetery rules. Initially, we were approaching this as a bylaw change, but it's actually a rule adopted by the Board of Selectmen, so it doesn't have to go to town meeting. So working with Paul Goodwin, Kenny Gibbons, Leah Moreski, and Scott Saulnier, we've updated the rules, gone through them. Like a lot of our rules and regulations and bylaws, they don't 100% accurately reflect the way that we actually do things, and that happens everywhere. Some things are written in bylaws and regulations that were well intended, but they're just not, they just don't work quite the way that they're sketched out. So what we tried to do was go through, without throwing the whole thing out, but go through it and update where it needed to be updated in order to reflect the way things actually work. And so it's not drastic in any way. It's quite useful. It'll be helpful to them because there were also multiple drafts of things floating around at DPW that didn't all jive with the regulations. So puts everything sort of in order. We did tweak the fees a little bit, which is at the end of the document, and really cleaned up that section on headstone size. And that was the one that the board kept getting hit with in terms of waivers from the dimensional requirements or dimensional limitations of the headstones. So we're all, again, Leah, Scott, Kenny, and Paul, and I, who worked on this, we're all in agreement that what we've put forward is accurate and reflective of the way that things actually operate, and also that the fees are correct and sufficient to cover their costs.
Andy, on the fees, the last one that says $5 for recording of deed, where is the deed recorded?
I honestly don't remember where that goes. I know that you can't sell a lot. If you own a grave lot, you can't sell it other than back to the community. But I don't remember the recording.
But it's not the registry of deeds.
No.
Yeah, because $5 would not cover anything.
Wouldn't get you very far. Yeah. Madam Clerk, I don't want to put you on the spot, but do you know where
I'm-
the cemetery deeds
I'm-
get recorded?
Well, so, no, I don't know firsthand, but what I will tell you is that I sign them. So Leah signs them and then she sends them along to me to be signed and certified. I then mail them to the buyer, the holder of the plot, and they stay in my office. So that's how it's been forever.
Hmm,
I have the deeds.
okay.
So I'm not sure $5 is enough.
Well, but what are we doing with them for the what are we doing with them for the $5?
Right, so it's just filing them in the office.
Well, you generate a piece of paper, you send it from one office to the other, you mail it to the,
Yeah, but I mean, the
It's
same time,
electronic.
I mean, the same time, we're charging fees for multiple other items that are happening at the same time. So, you know, there are times when folks purchase plots prior to doing a grave opening or any of those items, so.
all right.
I mean, if this is in fact a filing with the Registry of Deeds, then that does have to be updated.
Yeah, that much I know is not the case.
Anyone else?
I would find registered deeds. That doesn't make sense.
Okay, let's move on to the next agenda item.
Actually, if the board is satisfied and wants to vote on that, we can put this to bed.
Okay,
Yeah, Mr. Chairman, I move that we approve the revised Oakdale Cemetery rules as presented in tonight's meeting package.
I have a motion. Do I have a second?
Second,
I have a motion and a second. Mr. Casiotis, can you take a roll call vote?
Okay, Selectman Prentakis,
yes.
Selectman Cresta,
Yes.
Selectman Mareski,
Yes.
Mr. Chairman,
Yes.
and
All
myself,
right, passes unanimously. Great. Our next agenda item is to discuss and vote to appoint an alternate member of the Zoning Board of Appeals for the term through June 30th, 2020, rather than 2010.
Oh, yeah.
A little typo on there. And we have Rich,
Rich Benevento had submitted a letter expressing his interest in serving in this capacity. This is the unexpired term of Craig Hartwell. And so this only runs through the end of the fiscal year, and then would be making a new appointment or a reappointment at that time.
great. Do I have a motion?
Mr. Chairman, I move that we approve Rich Benevento as a member of the Board of Appeals alternate for a term through June 30th, 2020.
And do
Second,
I have a second. Any further discussion? If not, Mr. Casiotis, can you take a roll call vote?
Selectman Mareski,
Yes.
Selectman Cresta,
Yes.
Selectman Prentakis,
yes.
myself, yes, and Mr. Chairman,
Yes. All right, passing unanimously. Great.
I know Rich is here on the meeting. Thank you, Rich, for standing up and serving.
Sure, happy to do it. I think I had mentioned to all of you before in the past that, I think giving back to a community is a civic obligation. I like to be involved, and I hope that my background and experience can add a little to the appeals. Happy to do it.
Great. When you get back from the mountains, you can get your
No,
appointment.
actually, this is the view from Riverview Park. You've never been down here.
come on.
Beautiful down here. I do have one question. I know that in other capacities, I've had to get sworn in some way. Is it similar here in Middleton? And if so, what do I need to do for that?
What was the question?
Do I have to be sworn in?
Yes, you'll have to make arrangements with me. I'm in the office almost every day still. So you can come by and I'll come outside and I'll swear you in.
Okay, I'll wear a mask.
Absolutely.
Nice.
I'll reach
Nope.
out to you then. Thank you.
Okay, great.
Happy to
Thank
serve. Thanks a lot.
Thank you.
Great. Our next agenda item is a vote to accept the following donations. We have from Essex Community Foundation, $1,000 for the COVID-19 Response Fund. From Marion and Gerard Bohas, the amount of $500 to the Middleton Food Pantry. And from Susan Muzzachuk, the amount of $500 for the Middleton Food Pantry. Do I have a motion?
Mr. Chairman, just one little clarification on that. The Essex County donation is for the food pantry. The COVID-19 Response Fund is a specific fundraising arm under the Essex Community Foundation. So
Okay, so
it
it's
is the Essex
these
Community,
three will be all for the Middleton Food Pantry.
all for the food pantry.
Do I
Mr.
have a
Chairman, I move we approve these three donations in the total amount of $2,000 with thanks.
Do I have a second?
Second,
I have a motion and a second. Any further discussion? Hearing none. Mr. Cassiotis, could you take a roll call vote?
Selectman Prentakis,
yes.
Selectman Cresta,
Yes.
Selectman Reski,
Yes.
myself, yes, Mr. Chairman.
Yes, passes unanimously. Great. People are so generous. I mean, at times of trouble, the true
I
nature
know.
will really come
That
out.
is something to be said, for sure.
All right. Any new business?
Nope.
Anything else? I guess not. Any statements? Great. All right. We have our a meeting on Thursday, which is only 2 nights from tonight, a joint meeting. So we will meet again on that, at that point. Do I have a motion to adjourn?
Mr. Chairman, I move we adjourn.
All righty. And we will stand adjourned.
Thank you.
Thank everybody.